too many of those.
There's a really nice park there. And then second and Elliott Key and Kiki.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the budget workshop for June 25th, 2019, and call that to order at 10 o'clock today. Would everyone please stand for the invocation and pledge allegiance?
O merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jump on that bill.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Starkey.
I'm here.
District 4, Commissioner Rowell.
Here.
District 5, Commissioner Mariano.
Here.
District 1, Chairman Oakley.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So, at this time, we're going to discuss the draft of the 2020 budget.
All right, well, good morning, Board. Just want to, this is our budget workshop to go through both the general fund and then high level some of the enterprise funds and where we sit as we get ready to set the trim at your next meeting in July, and then, of course, in the public hearings in September. So just real quick, we've handed out a few items for you this morning, an updated PowerPoint. We made some very minor changes yesterday. You may not even notice them. Some of them were just formatting changes, but wanted to make sure you had the latest. A breakdown of the business plan initiatives with a little more discussion as we get into that slide. The standard pro forma that we've used in the past, currentently updated, and then the ranking sheet with all the general fund BPIs and municipal services fund BPIs. So those are in front of you there. And with that, at the table with me, I got Eric Breidenbach, my assistant county administrator for internal services, and then Bob Gordon, our budget director. And I'm going to kick it over to Bob and then let him kind of go through the presentation. Again, we'll weave through kind of where we are from an economic perspective, because that kind of always guides us from a budget perspective. The draft budget, where we are with respect to the general fund, municipal service fund, and fire fund, and then some of the BPIs, and then some of the other major funds at a very high level. And then we'll be ready for questions at any point. Just interrupt, and we can dive into some of those questions. So with that, I will hand the
Thank you.
clicker to Bob.
All right, thank you. Good morning. So this morning, we'd like to go through the draft budget, proposed budget, in preparation for the July 9th setting of the trim. I'd like to get your input on the budget today, so if there are any changes or any revisions you'd like to see of the budget, we can make those in time for the July 9th meeting. What we'd like to do first is go through our, what we call the canaries in the coal mine. So we have 3 measures that we keep track of, and these things kind of portend that if there's bad economic news coming, they kind of tank before the economy tanks. So it gives us a chance to respond, get things in order before we actually see a recession or a downturn in the economy. The first one is building permit activity. As I'm sure you're well aware, building permit activity is very strong. It's up over last year. And in fact, building activity really starts to decline about 3 years before we see a decline in the recession. So right now, building permits are still on the increase, and so we don't see any problems in that area. Sales tax revenues, as you can see, sales tax revenue begins to decline also before a decline in the economy. Sales taxes are coming in about 4.5% over last year, and we expect that trend to continue. And then finally is the trash that's collected. You can see the trash begins to drop off just as the economy begins to drop off. And because, you know, when people have money, they start replacing things, they're buying things. When things get tight, they stop replacing things, they hold on to things a little bit longer so there's less trash. And so we can see with the trash here that we're doing well. People are still generating lots and lots of trash. So in one sense, that's good. Another sense, that's bad. We can see here the taxable assessed values have returned to the levels finally where they were in 2008 at the end of the recession.
Although we have a lot more people. so-
Absolutely, yes.
That's also shown on the slide.
Yes, and the bottom line there with the diamonds, that's the population. We can show the population continuing to grow. And so we think our assessed values are much more stable than they were in 2008. 2008, there was a big housing bubble. Prices of housing were overinflated. And so now we've got more people, more houses, we've got a more solid economic base. And so we think this is a much more sustainable growth rate. As you can see here, Pasco County, for the most part, provides municipal services to the residents of the county. Upwards of 90%, 91% of our folks do not live in a city. And so Pasco County provides those municipal services. So even with that, if you look at the tax bill of Pasco County is about a third of those who would live in a large city in either Polk County, Hillsborough, or Pinellas counties. Looking at the number of employees, you can see the number of employees kind of bottomed out there in 2011 at 1,995, and that was as a response to the Great Recession. Since then, the number of employees has increased to about 2,500 this year, and that increase is really due to the demand for service, and that demand for service is the increasing population. If we look at those folks, the number of employees that have increased, most of those increases are from fire rescue, which makes sense. As we have more people, we need more fire stations, we need more services to them. It's in the areas of the building department, right? And so the building department is kind of self-sustaining fund, and so they're actually paying for themselves. As you know, we went out and just closed on about $60 million worth of our general obligations bonds. An important step in that was to go to the credit agencies on Wall Street and get a credit rating from them. We went to visit Moody's and Fitch, and we actually got upgraded from AA3 to AA2 by the Moody's. And Moody's and Fitch had very similar feedback for the county. So when they give a credit rating, they give you a report that explains why that report. So they justify the report that they've given you. The strengths that they've given the county are, as you see them here, and as you can see, the very first bullet point is the Moody's in particular recognize the activities by this board, our Economic Development Department, Tourism, and others to increase the diversity of our economic base. And so you can see there that they're very impressed with the economic diversity of the county. If you read reports, their feedback reports from 10 or 15 years ago, they described Pasco County as a retirement community or a bedroom community for Tampa. So they're no longer describing Pasco County in those terms. The second one is the growth in general fund revenue. So the Moody's and Fitch described the general fund revenue as adequate at 9.6%, but they were very impressed by the action taken by the board to agree to increase those general fund reserves. They are impressed with the revenues, so as our population increases, our sales tax, our property tax, and those kinds of things is increasing, and they believe it's increasing to the point where it is sufficient to cover our expenditures. Low debt levels, so those are fixed costs. And fixed costs are dangerous when an economic downturn, so you've got to pay those fixed costs first, and so that kind of hampers what you can do. And so the final bullet point addresses that idea of fixed costs. So I've got that in quotation marks because it's kind of worded funny. I would not have worded it that way, but this is right out of the report. And basically what they're saying is because you have low fixed costs and your revenues and expenditures are where they need to be, that the economy is in a very good place. There's a lot of resiliency here. So even in the time of an economic downturn, if that were to happen, they feel as though the county has enough resiliency to be able to respond to any economic downturn. So now I'd just like to jump into some highlights, kind of the executive summary of the budget, what we're seeing in the budget. As you know, under the Save Our Homes provision, if you have a homesteaded property, that homesteaded property is capped at an increase of 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. The rate of inflation for the next fiscal year or the next tax year is about 2.7%. So what that means for our residents is if you have a $150,000 home, you have $50,000 worth of homestead exemptions, that means your taxable value is $100,000. So the 2.7% increase, the taxable value of your property would increase by $2,700, right? And given the tax rate of 7.6076, you would pay an additional $20.54 due to an increase in the value of your home, not because there's any increase in the taxable or in the tax rate for your property. If you own a non-homesteaded property, on the other hand, that property, the same $150,000 property, would increase in value, taxable value, by $13,500, which means your taxes would increase about almost $103 just because of the increase in your property values, not because there's any increase in the tax rate. As we mentioned, we're recommending no increase in the operating millage or the fire MSTU millage.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
on that?
ma'am.
So on the Save Our Homes, it's 3%, and you say here, or the change in CPI. I thought it was
Yes.
3% or CPI.
That's correct. It's
Whichever is
3%,
less.
whichever one is less, yes.
What you said.
So I thought it would be 3% then.
The CPI was
CPI is
2.7%,
less.
Two point,
so
oh,
that's
it was
less.
2.7? Where did I hear it was gonna be 3?
No, I don't, yeah.
So it did not end up being 3?
No.
Okay, I just had heard that that was higher this year.
Okay.
We have never been at 3%.
No, and generally it's been less than 1%. For the past few years, it's been very, very low.
Yeah.
Bring that up.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're recommending no change in the stormwater assessment. It's $95 per home, per ERU, or per single-family home. A $7 increase in the solid waste assessment for residents of Pasco County, and this is to set some monies aside to increase the capacity of the waste-to-energy plant. Proposed utility increase, according to the 4-year rate resolution, is about 1.5% for water rates and 3.5% for wastewater. So if we look at our preliminary taxable assessed values, increased at 9%, so that we get the preliminary assessed values in June, we get the final assessed values July 1st. We should be getting those at any moment now. And so the base tax value increased almost $2.5 billion. The new construction value, on the other hand, increased to almost $1 billion. So overall, increased 9%, or to almost $2.5 billion altogether. If we turn to emergency reserves, as I mentioned earlier, the board at their February meeting agreed to increase the emergency reserves. You can see we've increased it from 9.6 to 11.1% for the general fund and the municipal services fund. All other major funds are at the 16.7% of reserves as recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association. If you remember, when we did the revenue projection workshop back in February, we thought that the taxable values might increase 9.5% or so. The preliminary values were 9%. So the difference between those two, as you can see, the June 1 numbers at 9% would generate an additional $2.69 million for the board. So the overall increase in property taxes at 9% increase in assessed value is about $17.5 million. Of that, we've agreed to split that 50-50 with the sheriff. So we agreed that $8.75 million would go to the sheriff. 8.75 would go to the board and other constitutional officers. From the board side, we would deduct that 8.75. We would deduct the TIF and the CRAs of just over $6 million. So that leaves $2.6 million in additional revenue for the board and other constitutional to fund new initiatives. So if we look at the tax increment financing areas, we see the countywide TIF would generate, at 9% increase, would generate about $22.7 million to be spent on transportation-related projects. The villages of Pasadena Hills, $680,000, and then the Lacucci area, $25,000. If we look at the community redevelopment areas, we have 4 of those in the 4 of the county's largest cities. And you can see overall in those areas, $2.5 million would be the price tag for all 4 of those CRAs.
But, Mr. Chairman,
That
Yeah.
full picture.
I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'll use Port Richey as an example. How many residents are in Port Richey?
2,500,
2,500.
like that, 2,000.
Well, that's a
So
good
break
calculator right there.
break that down to per resident, that's $764,000 per resident, and that's what citizens.
That's what we're paying.
They're getting.
Yes.
How many people in there? Oh, you're doing
25,
the
it's
law?
2,500, it's $300 a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it can go towards funding a sidewalk under the bridge.
Or when you guys are gonna talk about a dredging project, and there's your money right there. Done. Move on.
Absolutely. All right, if we look at the change in the major funds, we see the major funds on the left-hand side. We see the increases all the way on the left-hand side. So the fiscal year 19 adopted, that's the adopted. It doesn't include any changes that might have happened throughout the year. And then what we're recommending for fiscal 20. We see some of the major increases here. Building and inspection permitting fund, an increase of 8%, and that's simply because of the amount of activity in the building area. There's more expenditures related to that to make sure we can process all of those permits and inspections and so on in a timely manner. We have the fire fund at almost 9.5%, and a lot of those were due to, last year we added a number of new employees. A lot of those new employees came on midway through the year, and in 2020 they'll be actually funded for 12 months of the year. So that's a big portion of that increase.
Well, go back to that tourist development tax. So that's saying
So
that the
tourism-
numbers are pretty much the same, $6,000 difference?
From
Yes, we're expecting that to be
budget, yes.
budget to budget, yes.
But that's budget, that's
Just budget
expenses,
money.
not
Okay.
necessarily revenue.
All right.
So if we look at the general fund, 60% of the general fund is, revenues are generated from the ad valorem taxes. The intergovernmental revenue that you see there, the next biggest slug of money, that's from the half-cent sales tax and state revenue sharing. If we look at the expenditures then from the general fund departments, there's a lot going on in this chart here, so I'll just point out some of the big changes. So the court technology, that decreased by, looks like a big number, 7.8%, but it's just $100,000, and most of that is because a lot of the technology was purchased last year. They're not going to make those purchases. I'm sorry, I'm a year ahead. They were purchased in 19, so they're not going to be making those purchases in 20, and so that's the reason for that decline. Facilities management, you see there, 8% decline. Actually, it's kind of, it looks a little odd because what we did was we carried over money from 18 into 19 that hadn't been spent in 18. So there's actually $4 million that we carried over from one year to the next. And so that money being spent in 19, of course, won't be carried over into 20. We see the HR there at a 22% increase. The reason for that is because the expenditures for the ADA compliance used to be its own reserve, and now it's part of the HR budget. So that was the reason for that increase. Of course, medical examiner at almost a 20% increase just because we have more people. That means there's higher need for autopsies and so on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just one thing, and this is for Jack and his team. I mean, ever since I've been here, you guys have run so thin, and you're only asking for, barely an increase at all. You're going to count that as an increase. So, I mean, we appreciate everything that you do, and your team continues to do, running so thin. But I think, this is just me personally speaking here. I mean, I don't think you're going to offend any of us if it comes to a point where you feel you need to add another 30 on board. I know how hard they work, and I deal with you on a pretty consistent basis in your team, and the hours, the weekends, and the nights that I'm on the phone with various attorneys on different projects. So I just wanted to say that. I mean, again, year after year, you basically ask for nothing, and you guys work your tails off there. So.
In the attorney review, that's where I ding him, not, yeah, look after your people.
I appreciate that. We have a vacant slot that we haven't filled, that the board was kind enough to authorize last year.
Right.
We didn't fill it because we're in the middle of renovations
Right.
and we didn't have anybody I didn't feel it was fair to put somebody through that. And so once that lawyer comes on board, we'll reevaluate what's
Nothing
going
last year's
on.
budget does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what weaknesses are that we need to
Mr. Chair.
deal with.
In the same vein, have we taken care of the problem where your attorneys were going for their continuing education, they were having to pay for it out of their own pocket?
Yes.
We took care of that.
Yeah, well, they weren't having to pay for, they were having to pay for travel under the old budget cuts for themselves. We were taking care of the cost of the seminars themselves, but now we've allocated
They don't have to
budget.
come out of pocket.
They don't have to come out of pocket.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah,
I mean, again, I just say it because
no, you're right.
listen, I didn't. Watch how I say this. Well, if you, a lot of these attorneys, if they were on the open market and on different practices, the private practice, I know for a fact, let's just be honest, they'd be making quite a bit more. Well, let's be honest, dollars. So again, I appreciate.
As we know from when we hire outside counsel to fill some of those.
So I appreciate the hours that they put in, and they're not able to bill for that extra time, so. Good attorneys are very important for accounting, so.
I appreciate it, thank you.
We received all the budgets from the constitutional officers with the exception of the tax collector, and state statute, the tax collector's budget is not due till August 1st, but we've got all the others. Yes, ma'am?
Can we go back to Parks and Recs?
Oh, sure.
I'm very concerned we're going backwards.
We're not.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at a negative,
No, I know.
big
Yeah,
number.
But
It appears as though it's gone backwards, and what's happening here is we've actually had to take a step back because of the revenues we were going to generate from the fees for the league fees. And so we didn't have the revenues to bring on those resources, and so those are budgeted, but for half of the year this year. So the revenues are down, so that just meant we couldn't bring on those resources for a full year.
the other thing we did is y'all had consistently over the last few years added an additional $1 million to cover deferred maintenance. That's part of its base budget now.
Okay.
So that additional money that you had historically put in there to help with deferred maintenance, that's actually part of its base budget now. And because the capital bond took some of those projects out of his, now we're paying for them with the general obligation bond, his buy down of the long-term maintenance is less. And so he's
But he has so
reallocated a
many
little bit of
capital
that.
needs too, so there's so many capital needs in there.
Yes,
Just-
but that was a deferred maintenance thing. That was not a capital need, so.
Well, I would say there's still capital. We want splash parks.
Yes, we do.
And we have bike trails coming on that we need management of, and so.
Okay, so you can see the sheriff's budget
I'm not
increased
seeing
by
the
about
line.
almost 6.6%. Property appraiser and the clerk's budgets increase very minimal amounts, and that's basically pay raises for employees. You can see the supervisor of election budget, an increase of 16.9%, which at first blush is a shocking increase, but when you think the supervisor of election has a cyclical budget, one year they have elections, the next year it's down. And we got some data from the tax collector, so if you think about the number of residents, about 50,000 new voters a year coming into the county that need to be serviced. That required an increase in the number of precincts from 110 to 113. Most of the 60% of the voters vote either early voting or vote by mail, so that caused an increase in expenditures. The early voting sites for the next election will be increased from 8 to 11. And the days that the early voting sites are open will be open from 8 days to 14 days to allow those crowds to get through there in a timely manner. The vote by mail requests in 2016 were 68,000 vote by mail. And in 2019, we're expecting that to increase to about 90,000. So given all those things, that's the reason for that increase there.
And his budget's smaller, so when you see a number, it
Yeah,
affects it.
16%, but the dollar number is not quite as much as you would think.
We sat down with him and his staff and went through kind of line by line his request and what they justified, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And just say, I did talk with Supervisor Cooley as well, and the general election is the biggest push for where he's going to cover that. And having been out there for several of those runs when people wait in line, I agree with what he's doing.
Yeah, we believe it's a reasonable request.
A question on some of these others. Do they, say the property appraiser? I can't recall, and I don't use his business, but do they generate fees?
They do generate fees.
And so their fees don't cover their,
No.
Not like the tax collector. No.
okay.
So if we look at a number of required expenditures in the budget, these are the things that the state has required the county to absorb. We look at some of those to the tune of about 18, almost $19 million. We have our Medicaid match for the state, $7.3 million. Burials, $116,000. Baycare for mental health and rehabilitation, $1.2 million, and so on. If we look at our municipal services fund, the revenue sources for this, the biggest source is 31% of our revenues come from chargebacks to other funds. So the folks in the municipal services fund will do work on behalf of another fund. Those chargebacks come back to that. For example, code enforcement does some work for the building fund. The building fund then pays that portion of their salary that's devoted to building kinds of things. If we look at our municipal services fund, the major departments in that fund, we can see the increase and the decrease. The major one that pops out at you here is fire rescue. It looks like it's decreasing by 32%. But the reason for that is because a lot of what was in the fire rescue administration budget is actually should have been charged to the fire fund. So most of the expenditures are 50-50 between the municipal services fund and the fire fund for administration. Many of those costs, particularly around vehicles, was not split 50-50. So once we split those expenditures, it just made it appear as though that's a big decrease. But really, those expenditures were just shifted from municipal services to the fire fund. So if we look at some of the infrastructure investments being made in this fiscal year 2020 budget, we look at the $2.7 million for repairs and other capital improvements to existing infrastructure, buildings and so on in the county. About a little over $1 million worth of that will be spent on sheriff-type facilities. We will continue to fund $1.15 million for the facilities master plan, $1.6 million for IT infrastructure, and about $1 million, as Dan mentioned, that $1 million in deferred maintenance. That was always in their budget, and since we got the general obligation bond that was going to repair a lot of those projects that was funded by the GO bond, we allowed the parks to say, okay, if you had this $1 million, how would you spend it? And so a piece of that, about $300,000 of that, is still going to maintain deferred maintenance, but mainly for those things that aren't covered by the bond. So you have things like painting and sod and doors, things like that that aren't capital repairs but still need to be done. Yeah. So about $300,000 of that will go towards those kind of projects. And then the remainder of it will go to additional staffing to help maintain the kind of the progress we've been making in keeping up with all of that maintenance. So now I'd like to turn to the business plan initiatives in the general fund and the municipal services fund. We received 115 BPIs altogether. As we mentioned earlier, we asked our departments to go out and tell us everything that they believe they needed. In the past, what we found was that our departments were kind of censoring themselves. They would say during the year they needed some things, and we say, well, why didn't you request that? Well, I didn't think I'd ever get the money for that. And so we said, this year, tell us everything that you think you might need and throw it out there. And so we've given you that in this list. This is everything that we've received from the departments for their BPI request. What we've got here is we ranked the top 50, and we believe, depending on how much money the final assessed values bring in, we can adjust this line. So we've ranked about 50 of these proposals that we think are the most important. Those are the priority proposals. We've ranked them, so we have a 9% cut line and a 9.5% cut line. If the cut line is more or less, we simply go up the line and just begin cutting. So as you can see, we've gone over all of these with you before, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just for the folks in the audience, just hit a couple of high points. You can see the first two there are the wage increases for the general employees and the fire rescue employees, the union employees. We're in the middle of a study now to look at comparisons of compensation between Pasco County and surrounding counties, and these are the numbers that were suggested by that classification study. You can see the libraries, we're going to be opening the last of the 3 libraries to restore them to the full hours that they were in 2008, I believe, when they rolled those back.
Just if I can, as a reminder to the board, before we ever start any of these BPIs, by going to 11.1% in the general fund reserve, you've already packed 4.3 million into your fund balance, into your savings account before you ever start to taking any BPIs. So, you already set aside 4.3 million in your fund balance. So just want, as a reminder, you see a lot of things here, we ranked a lot, but you've already, the unranked BPI on that list is that fund balance went from 9.6 to 11.1%, and that was about $4.3 million.
Which
So-
was what helped us get the lower bond ratings, the
Yes.
good bond ratings,
Absolutely.
that kind of commitment to our fund balance.
So you can see on the second page of the business plan initiative list, where we'd like to add 2 code enforcement officers in fiscal '20. We'd like to add a project manager for the facilities department. So we have lots and lots of projects. We'd like the project manager to come and move those projects along. We've got a market area plan in the budget. We have a couple of master gardeners, and there's a large number of master gardeners. We would like to have in the cooperative extension area someone to manage those, train them, send them out on jobs and so on.
And I think the bottom one is, we're in the middle of the Starkey Ranch development and construction. Near the end of next fiscal year is about the time we need to bring somebody on to start putting together the operating piece of that. And so that's why that's on the list. It's slow because it's late in the fiscal year, but that's why it's on the list.
And this is the list for the 9%. If the assessed value is increased by 9%, these would be the business plan initiatives that are funded. For those, if it increases to 9.5%, those are shown on the second page of the sheet here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Go back to the previous slide.
This one.
The market area plan, okay. When I looked at that thing, the first thing that jumped out at me and I shared with staff was the market area plan. We've done plans up and down, all over the county, et cetera. And, I had brought up that idea about the boat fees a few years ago and trying to look it through, trying to walk it through. And I've given up on that idea just because of the imbalance from the inside people in the boats and the waters on the lakes that may not ever hit it. But I really think we should take a close look at our coast. I mean, we've got great coastal places. We've got channels that need to be dredged, not only just the main channels, but the side ones. And I really would like us to take a look at putting a plan together, even if it comes to another tax increment program for that area, or MSTU or something, to get them to fund themselves, but to put something together. There's so much value that's there, but when you've got, I give you an area like Westport, right above the mall, it's like a foot and a half of water. They can't get out. Gulf Harbor's got a couple of spots, Hudson Channel's got some issues, Leisure Beach, Leisure, in their area, or Sea Pine's another one. So I think we can really elevate our tax base if we make the Gulf access a better way to go. So if I'm gonna put money in a market area plan, I'd like us to take at least 1 year and just go study it, because right now, we had that other money we were gonna use for the dredging of Gulf Harbors and study it for about 100 grand. We had to pull it because the way it was bid doesn't fall in line with the Restore Act money. It would delay us another whole year to go forward with it. But we've got a lot of BP money that's still coming we can use for a partial funding, as well as this tax increment plan. What does the board think about actually taking a look at the channels? At least let's go find out what it may really cost to go forward with it.
So,
Start.
are you saying that we're not gonna go out to bid with that 100? I mean, isn't that,
No,
are we
we-
just looking for a different way to bid
We're
it?
looking for a different way to contract it.
But
Yes,
say,
ma'am.
but we're
It's
still
still
using
there.
that money?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we're still gonna do that study. So I think
So
that's
this,
important
so
to do.
just,
That's,
while that says market area plan, just a little more definition of that. That is,
That's-
we have the harbors area plan
Gateways.
that's pretty well developed for the
Yeah.
harbors area. This is to look at the next plan on the list, which is a gateway crossing
Yeah.
plan, and develop that in such a way that it, to the extent that the harbors area plan is developed, right? And so there's a lot of, high-level, long-range planning effort that is really a general fund activity that goes into that, and that's what this is.
How much money is needed in that to do that dredging?
Well, so I think what correct me if I'm wrong,
And then
Commissioner, I think what
we-
he's talking about is doing a high-level study of all the canals along the coast that are unincorporated Pasco County, not just the two main ones that are part of the Restore Act, but the balance of them, and say, okay, what would it take, and then what can be some strategies to fund that, right? I think that's, if I kind of interpret it correctly, that's kind of what that is. Now, again, that would be a general fund type of activity if you wanted to do that,
Then you have to figure out the funding to take care of.
to actually do the
portions of that
dredging.
as we go.
Correct.
Exactly, we need to just set the plan to figure out what it possibly could cost, then go put a plan together in front of the people to say, okay, here's what we can do, here's what it's gonna cost, how we're gonna fund it, and then we can reach out to them. I mean, literally, every boating person I talked to along the coast loved the idea of putting the extra money into it to help out, they were willing to do that. Everyone I talked to as well is really talking about along their channels, if they live on water, they're willing to participate as well. I mean, Gulf Landing is ready to go do an assessment on these people right now, so, yeah. So, I mean, and Bailey's Bluff people were worth,
Well, I can tell you,
Money
the first
towards
time I went on the boat parade with you guys this year, but first time I'd ever seen that coast like that, never been out there. That's absolutely beautiful. We need to protect it and make it better on the whole coast. And then we've got the stop season coming again, so we need all that, so.
But we have 100,000 set aside from Restore that we can use. We just have to bid it differently than we did before. So I think we should let that
And that's
process
focused
go.
really on the two main channels, Hudson and Gulf Harbor. It's not focused on
Yeah.
all the side channels that are back to residential houses. It's not focused on that. That 100 grand is really for those two main
True.
channels. It's not to develop for lack of a term, a master plan, if you will,
Which
for all
I
the
think would be
channels on the
valuable.
coast with ways and some options for the board to work at funding. Now, so
Yeah.
but we also don't have a gateway crossing plan either, and that's an area that's, really developing fast, and so, and so,
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I think almost two separate issues, right? So if you look at those two channels, especially in like the Hudson channel, I think that's something that the county would be, that's more of a public area the county would be more apt to participate in when it comes to dredging. I think we have two separate issues going on when we talk about residential canals too. So I'm, if everybody don't know Commissioner Wells, wants to jump into it. Looking at how to finance that, especially since you're saying that people are willing to now, definitely want to look at it. I wouldn't disagree. But
Yeah,
Again,
it's-
how do you,
So we have a study going now?
for what?
it's two separate.
No, it's two separate issues. We had a contract that we thought we could award through a piggyback. Unfortunately, that original contract was not Restore Act eligible. So we're having to go back, track to find either a current Restore Act eligible contract or go out on the street for a Restore Act contract for that. What the commissioner's talking about is actually a different one that would look at the balance of the coast, if you will, to develop kind of a high-level plan along with some funding options for the board to evaluate. Now, so that's one option. I would say, our priority would be we have one of the 5 market areas actually planned in this county. Our priority would be, to do the second one, the Gateway Crossings Plan, and develop that to the level the Harbors Plan is developed. So that's what this BPI is. Now, so I think what the commissioner is suggesting is to switch that out and instead of that, do a dredging, use that money to do an overall dredging plan.
well, let me just
So,
clarify,
Gateway crossing.
let me just be clear.
What area?
I want to say this.
It's a
Yeah, if I
56,
could-
54
Just to
corridor.
clarify my
How do you
statements.
consider that?
Yeah, just to clarify my statements.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to even abandon the other one, but when I first look at that, I says, okay, we've done all the studying on this other one already, let's go really look at the coast and go take that next step. I don't want to just go put another study on the table. Let it go put in the closet and sit. I want to do something now that we've got a plan.
Right.
And now that we've got these things we're working on, there's nothing to say we can't do both of them. But that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw and sat down with staff. What about what we've done? We're already trying to make something work. It didn't work that way. Let's go try another way. And again, like bridging up and down the coast is critical.
We added that extra money in the tourism bond. Is that the right way to say that?
Yes, ma'am.
For additional to look at additional boat ramps and so I wonder if some of that money can be added into part of the reason we want to look at the whole
That's the
coast.
agreement we made when we did with that.
Well, hang on, you know, it's to do boat ramps. And so we need to know where and how many we should do. Shouldn't the upcoming scallop season, traffic wouldn't we need to assess what we need to really sustain that and grow that? And wouldn't.
Well, I think the number of boat ramps is different than the dredging of the off main channel canals.
Well, I'm just talking about
It's
a-
also you're using capital dollars
Right.
for a
Okay.
study.
Right.
But I think what we're talking about is a master plan for the coast, which includes boat ramps and dredging, and what else? I mean, I think we should think big. You know, one of the things that we're talking about at Anklet River Park is a restaurant on the water. I mean, what can we do to maximize the economic value of our coastline? And I do think that involves tourism efforts and residential efforts. So,
Mr. Wells, you want to add something?
No, and keep in mind, some of that money's already spent. It's gonna be, a lot of the money's gonna be spent at Anklet. You know, Keith's team has a plan on additional properties that we own that, you know, kind of, we talked about having access coming out by like where you live, right there on that little canal, kind of, we own that property there, maybe having a boat ramp there, just talking out loud. We do need more access. I don't necessarily disagree with looking at maybe a plan. I don't really think it's worth hiring consultants. I think Keith and his team
For
can
the
do
boat
it
ramp.
ourselves.
For the
Yeah,
boat
for boat
ramp,
ramps.
yeah,
I know
right.
that, I know we looked at it. We need more centralized instead of Anklet, Hudson, Port Richey. I know we're trying to work with Port Richey. Hopefully with the new mayor, we can sit down again and discuss what we can do together, because I know they don't have the funds, maybe we do, to help. I think even though it's Port Richey, if we were to help them financially to expand that ramp and make it, you know, an A+ ramp, I think the board, again, I would have to go to the board for approval. But I guess my question is, with the 100,000, how do we get in a situation where we're delayed 6 or 9 months? Do we not include the federal
so-
lobbyists to say, hey, what's the right way to do this with the restorer to get a qualified person?
We didn't put the bid
Okay,
out.
so-
It
Yeah,
was-
right, we
it
were
was a
piggybacking.
piggyback.
Yeah,
let me help
okay.
Nate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah, so.
it was discovered at
Chair,
Yes, sir.
so if the board's okay, let us figure out what a high-level dredging master plan would kind of cost, right?
I
Outside
just
the
think
100
dredging
grand.
is just part of the plan.
Outside the,
Personally, I think it's bigger than just
Restore Act, and then whether that's a 1-year deal or a phased approach over a period of years, figure out what that is. Keep this in for Gateway Crossing, because I think we really need to
No, we-
finish that plan. And then, depending on where Gary comes back, whether it's 9.5, or more than 9.5, maybe there's some flexibility there at that point to fund part of that master plan effort. That makes sense? And part of our thoughts for us, if he came in over 9.5, then that money could go to capital projects, right? Because those are one-time expenses. This is effectively a one-time expense to kind of figure it out. So that would kind of fall into that realm if he came in at over 9.5.
Ms. Martin.
I personally think it's bigger than just dredging. So we need increased boater access. We need dredging. What else do we need on the coast? We bought that property over by, is it American Marina? We used to keep our boat there. What is that property at that?
Rocky Creek.
Rock,
We can't
no,
develop
not
that.
Rocky Creek.
No, it's Rocky Creek, right next to American Marina. Yeah, we bought
Oh,
all that land
okay.
to
So we
keep
bought
them
that property
from
there. What have we
development.
done with it? Have we developed any kayak launches or pads for people to, you know, on the Blue Trail that goes around the state, they could camp on? I mean, we've done nothing with that property. Then I look at the Warner Boyce. We should be working with our legislators to get amenities into Warner Boyce. We have a lot of opportunity on the coast that I don't think we've maximized, that no one has taken a look at comprehensively. So I think dredging is just a small part of it.
Well, Chairman, if I could, and I don't see why, if we're gonna talk about boat ramp expansion, talk about kayak, just boater access, because obviously it's important. I think you guys know, I talk about it all the time. For those of you that have boats, pretty much what you all do. He's got a new boat coming, but it's important. Maybe we can use some tourism money, because it is linked to maybe do a study. I don't know. Again, I don't like spending a lot of money on studies, but I don't want to be sitting here 3 years from now saying, well.
I think it's, one, we don't know the magnitude of the cost.
Yeah.
right, to
Right.
do, and two, we need to bring you some options on how to fund it, right? Because I think I've heard various ways to do it, but we probably need to bring you some, as part of that. And
Is
so,
that-
whether
does
it's
that
part
fall under
residual,
utilities?
so,
Does that fall
so,
under-
so,
Yeah,
so the
Cabral
dredging
wants to say
piece,
something, by the way.
the dredging piece
Okay.
itself is a public works activity. The master plan that the commissioner's kind of talking about with amenities and everything else is really a parks tourism combination, right? So one chapter, if you will, is dredging, and that's really a public works item, mainly because it's a transportation network, it just happens to be water instead of roads. The things the commissioner's talking about, or with respect to boat ramps and access, is really a parks tourism type discussion, which would be a high level umbrella, which is separate. Then a look at how do we do the dredging piece up and down the coast and incorporate Pasco County. So let us take that for action, kind of develop maybe a strategy to do that, and then bring that back to the board, whether we incorporate part of that into this budget or not. We can kind of give you some ideas between now and September about how to make that happen.
Chairman, if I could, I think we need to involve like our state and federal legislators, because it's kind of a life safety issue, and I boat all the time out here. I've seen the canals he's talking about. Hudson Canal was done terrible with federal dollars back before I was here. I mean, you better off taking the old channel that was dredged before. It's terrible. People can't get out to fish, to work, to make money, not to mention, again, life safety, can't maybe get in if there's an emergency, they can't even get in the canal. So something needs to be done, but I would hope federal dollars could help.
Well, I think
You
that's
know, I
part
just
of
don't
what we
see an
look at, yeah.
MSTU or an MSBU, in my opinion, passing. Maybe it will. Maybe we do it and we let the voters vote, or let the residents vote on it. And if they want it, then so be it. But I don't know that it would, but
Okay.
it's needed. I mean, there's no doubt.
All right,
Mr. Mayor,
I think I have direction.
Yeah, and, you know, who knows what's gonna happen, but frankly, I'm looking at whatever options are out there to
Absolutely.
make it all work. There's a strong demand for it. I mean, the Hudson Channel, like you said, that was actually approved before I was elected. I get to negotiate a lot of the terms and listen to the people who complain about it. Work with DEP, you got very little accomplished other than no seagrass zones on the side where people could go out for the safety going to the side. But even we had to like shrink it down from 5-foot depth to a 4.75, knowing we still left rocks in there. So I mean, these are things that are, they are tourist development related. But I'll tell you, there's another benefit too that's out there. We're looking at this whole dredging thing. If you look at Port Richey, we got a big Port Richey outfall that's down there. Now, we got $5 million we just got from the Restore Act that's gonna help us from Magnolia Valley, I think, down. But if you look at, there's 5 different little canals that are there, that all reach, that are part of it. They're all blocked up. And I say blocked up, they're slowed down as far as the silt that can get out. DEP, SWIFMUD says, put us a plan together to go forward. With Port Richey and all the stuff going on, haven't got a plan back. Hopefully tonight's meeting is a stepping stone to coming up with something. But if we can look at this, we might even go to the Restore Act with Part 2 money, which is more environmental. And if they look at stormwater, flushing, to be important for water to get in and out of these canals, which we heard about Gulf Harbors and Gulf Landings, all the way through, if that's something to be incorporated to, that could be a whole nother pot of money. But I can tell you from what I've learned, if you don't have a full study together to what the cost's gonna be, what the benefit's gonna be going forward, you're not gonna get the money. So this investment coming up is critical. From everyone I've talked to, they wanna see better Gulf access. And it is a great asset up and down this whole state of Florida, but we don't capitalize on it because of the handicaps we've got. And we can, I think, inexpensively at least make this first step and then go to the people and say, okay, how do we wanna make this work?
I think you're
All
right.
right,
Well, Ms. Hardy?
On July 10th, I have a meeting with our federal lobbyist and the coastal guy, and if we publicly notice it, and anyone else who wants to be in that meeting, you're welcome to come, that's okay. And we can talk about these things and learn about what might be out there. I know we learned at our MPO meeting of lots of funding sources that I don't think we go after, and we should try.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, and then I know we need to move on here, but maybe start looking at different areas that are similar to ours that don't have, you know, beaches or beach access, i.e. Crystal River, Omasassa. Looked at the Keys. The Keys don't have any real beaches either. Looked at what they're doing with those canals. Again, I don't know, you know, personally, but how are they paying for it? What's the resident involvement, et cetera? That's what I would start doing.
All right.
You know, that's.
Okay. I think I
Look and
have
see what other people are doing in similar
I think we
situations
have
to ours.
direction. Yeah, I think we have direction, we can move on something. Yep.
Okay.
So,
All right.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good discussion.
Thank you.
now the other one.
So during the budget process, we've got a number of requests from outside agencies for the county to assist them with funding. The first is endowment for senior services. There's been a grant proposed to help feed the elderly in the eastern part of the county. And the county's portion, in order for that money to come, the charity is asking for the county to match $60,000. We have the Coalition for the Homeless is asking to fund one
Chairman.
employee. Yes.
And you've already met with the board and kind of went over exactly what that money.
Well,
would be
very
for.
high level, not necessarily into
Okay.
the details
Okay.
about this, but only as part of the budget process, so.
Okay. So, I mean, does everybody know, I mean, because it was more, but I mean, we had a good fundraiser with Feeding Pasco's elderly. We were able to raise another 35,000, so we have about 150,000 in the bank, so it might even be less than 60. But basically, we're looking at a $200,000 endowment, a match. So it's a no-brainer, in my opinion, that it's free money that we're gonna get back that goes directly to our seniors, which is what Feeding Pasco's elderly does, which is a nonprofit that no one gets paid at all. We're all volunteers, so I just want to make sure, that's all. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
I like it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the request to fund one employee for a Coalition for the Homeless, the Premier Health Care Grant. They came and made a presentation to you, I believe, at your last meeting.
Which also pulls federal money down.
And then the United Way. So we currently fund the United Way to the tune of $300,000 per year. The United Way has asked for an additional $150,000 to bring that total to $450,000 a year. So that total request is $625,000. We felt if the current emergency reserve at 11.1%, if we took that reserve to 11.0%, that would free up $430,000 that could be used to fund any of those that you so felt needed to be funded.
And again,
That
just,
everybody, so what was the consensus? after you met
it was
everybody?
different. Which is why this is up here. And again, the, going from 9.6% to 11% is a 5-year glide slope to get to 16.7. So why 11.1 is where we'd like to be. If the board is comfortable at 11%, we would be comfortable at 11% and use that delta, if you will, to help fund some of these. Again, you can say no to all of them, and I'm perfectly happy at 11.1% fund balance too. Either way is a 5-year glide slope to the 16.7.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Carter?
Two suggestions. In the past, our constitutionals have come to us with requests for outside funding, and I would suggest that that 150, that's the pot. So if they come to us with outside funding requests, if they don't, we have that, we can fund it from the money that they've been, picking their own charities with, it's a thought. I don't know what that number was last year, but do you recall
It
from?
was 100,000 from the clerk and
How much from the clerk?
100,000, 250
And
from
250
Okay, so
from
there's
the
your
tax collector.
150 for United
But
Way.
that wasn't money that was in our budget, that was found money that she made in revenue.
Right, I'm saying if they.
Well, no, so it's money that they are required
I
statutorily to
understand.
return to you at the end of the
Saying
year
there's-
if they don't
We don't know what
spend.
it's gonna be this year though.
We've built a running average is built into your budget of what gets returned every year. So that's already built into the budget.
I got you.
So that's, the running average is about 2.6 million total is what we've been receiving from them. All of them.
Wait, there were two parts to my thing. And there's something that's not in this budget that I would like to see back, and that is our outside legislative person. I think we do better when we have some help. So
So
I'd like to bring that back.
Mr. Chairman?
Personally, I think we've done as well as we could do this year with the funds being so tight, mainly because of the storm up in the Panhandle. I don't think that would have changed anything this year. Mr. Moore?
Thank you. So, and we need to come up with something here. This is why we're here today.
Yes.
So, I'm good with the match of the 60. I say give Premier 150 and call it a day. That's
It's 210?
That's
210.
I'm agreeable with the senior services for sure, no doubt about it.
Do you want to go, or do you want? I mean, I know Mariana was first, did you?
You know, I'm 100% with the senior services. I mean, feeding, Pasco's Emily's done a great job raising money, creating awareness as well. I think the board's been supportive as well, but if you're gonna get a match like that, 50-50, that's easy.
Yeah.
You know, one thing with Premier Healthcare, I mean, they do a good job, and, you know, from the workshop we had with the presentation, he came forward, let's say, you know, I wanted to make sure that he was reaching out, and he has reached out to the hospitals. The hospitals have to give a lot of money that they put in towards it, plus they do in-kind treating, so, you know, they're doing their part, it's just a separate way of doing it. So it's not like he didn't even try to get the money, but I think it's still of the remaining, I think that Premier Health deserves more than the rest. And if it's matching money that they get as well to help,
It's more than 1-to-1 that they pull down
It's
from the
like
feds.
115 or something to 120, I can't remember the
So
exact
if
number.
you give them 100 or 150, then that.
Then they
will
pull
turn
in another
into
150. More than,
150
Yeah,
plus.
it's close to 200, yeah.
Yeah,
Chad, you want to jump in?
yeah.
Or you want to stay silent? It's up to you.
Got some questions. So I'll mention the endowment for the senior services. Thank you. I know Commissioner Wells has been very instrumental in obtaining that for us, so thank you so much for that. That to me is a no-brainer. The Premier Health, I've had the opportunity to be visiting and working a lot lately with Joey, and I've been very impressed with what they do for our community. 350, just remember, you fund it this year, you're going to be funding it next year, because this is going to be continuation. This is not just a one-stop thing. They're going to be asking us on a continuous basis, so keep that in mind. And then, do you have any other questions for me or any other?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Kathy. Again, I just want to remind everybody that, you know, this board, we didn't come to an agreement that we want to start putting money back in reserves, and we need to get those up to a certain point. Commissioner Stark, you made a good point about, you know, it could help with the bond rating and things like that. But again, you know, I know Commissioner Wells and I both came on the 14, and there was a lot of things, as I think we all agree, that needed to be done because we were coming out of, obviously, the recession and just a terrible economic times. So there's a lot of catch-up we had to do. So there was a necessity to spend money, quite a bit of money in different areas to get our services and up to the levels we need to be again. And I think everybody's done a great job. And I see Heather sitting over there, and she had to work through that with all of us during that time frame too. Now, again, I think it is time that we need to start putting that money away because we do not know how long this great economy is going to last. Well, we hope it will for a long time, right? But we just don't know, and we can't get ourselves stuck. You know, if we want to maintain a level of service where we are now 5 or 6 or 7 years from now, we're going to have the funds to pay for it. If not, you're going to be in the same situation we were in the past, where you're laying off employees left and right. So, and then we're going to be in worse shape because now we have to subsidize all those unemployed folks, right? And it's just reality. So, and I understand, we're always going to have requests. And there's going to be, I see the long list, I have it printed out here, I don't know if anybody else did because I asked for it, of the request to the United Way. Now, again, it's never going to end. Again, there's a point where you're going to have to just say no to some folks. It's just the way it is. And I know some folks don't like to hear this, and it may sound a little brash, but it isn't. I'm not trying to sound brash in any way, but when you decide to start a not-for-profit, okay, you need to be ready to be able to raise the money, get the money, and fund your services, okay? That's a fact. Some of the folks on here, I mean, I look at what they're asking, hey, they're great programs, but at the same time, maybe some of them not as much as others, right? You decide to start something and you can't handle it's time to move on, especially when we have duplication. We have so many duplication of services in this county. It's incredible. Some of these folks need to come together. Egos get in the way sometimes. It's a fact. You know, I'm better than this one. I'm better than this charity. But you all do the same things. Sometimes they need to just come together, work together, and it will work out so much better. in the long run too, if they do. So, just a nickel and dime, you can't keep doing that. So, again, I would like this, I'm good with the endowment. I think giving Premier a portion of it, we gave him $350 a couple years ago. I even said he could come in earlier, which they did. But again, $150 and United Way, a nice gentleman, I met him, he seems like a great guy. At the same time, I did tell him that you need to do a better job of going out and raising money yourselves. He agreed, and he said they were going to hire somebody to help with those efforts. Okay? I'm fine giving them the $250 they've had each, or is it $250 they've had each year? Or is it
It's 300.
300?
250 is for their, what they use to appropriate, 50 is really for our request.
But we need to get this reserves back to a point where, God forbid, something happens, we have the money. We need it, that's it. We need
Ms.
it.
Stark?
I'm going to agree with Mike. And about the United Way, just so you all know, this happened before I got here. And you might recall, the county used to be the one who decided who got all the outside funding.
No, Mike
And
and
the
I were here for
idea
that.
went that it was going to go to United Way, and United Way had a committee, and they would pick everybody. So we are kind of starting to see ourselves build up. We're starting to get where we're doing both again. And I think we have to be very careful of that slippery slope. And I agree, I talked to the United Way gentleman, and he agreed they are outside, their funding, their solicitation for funds from the private sector is not where it could be. And that's really where they need to go. And when the first year I was elected, we were still dealing with the budget crisis. And I remember when the senior services needed money to get people off the waiting list, and we suggested, please start a not-for-profit. I know people would give to that charity, and they will step up. And so now we have the Feeding Pasco's Elderly, and they do a great job. So our community has grown, and there's a lot of opportunity for new people that have moved here to get involved with some of these not-for-profits. So I'm gonna go with what Commissioner Moore has suggested, but I also want to keep our eye on outside agency, the other constitutional's requests. I think that's another slippery slope we need to be careful not to go down. That's a new thing that's happening in the last few years. Didn't happen before, and we need to be careful of those as well.
Chairman, so Commissioner Starkey, just so I'm clear, so you're okay giving Premier $150,000?
Yeah, I mean, I would even like to give them 2, but I mean, they're so needed in Holiday. There's nothing else there, but I think if we get more money back, maybe we can. If things change with the number from the property appraiser and what the constitutionals give us back, maybe there's more room. But I do think we need an outside legislative help.
If you get more money back, we might already be looking at putting that in reserve instead of putting more out.
And Dan, just so I'm clear with United Way, are we, in the budget, we're assuming $300,000?
The
So they're gonna get
300's built into the
$300,000.
budget.
So they're gonna get
300's built in.
$250 plus the 50. 'Cause
Correct.
keep in mind, and Commissioner Moore and I, our first year when we got elected, we still had to divvy out this money. So we had all the nonprofits coming to us, staying there, talking to each of us from us being on the dais. It was tough because they really didn't give us quarterly updates. We really had no idea what these nonprofits were doing. And that's where the United Way came in, and we said, okay, let's let them do it. So to give you an idea, they give over to over 30 nonprofits out of the funding that we give them.
Right.
They're doing great things with it. I guess one thing I would ask on the record from the board is our campaign's coming up for the county. The last couple of years, we've fallen short, which I think it probably starts with us, so I think it's probably, I take some responsibility personally because I didn't help push it last year. I personally didn't get the funding thing where they can get it taken out of your check. I will do that this year, but I think we gave like 10,000 as a county last year. I would love to see that number double or triple. It's a great thing for these employees and myself and each of you to give back to, and you can actually pick which nonprofit you personally want to be involved with. It could be the Boys and Girls Club or Habitat or, so I still would like to see United Way get the funding. They could use it. And the 50,000, I can't tell you the families that we were able to help. And keep in mind, I sit on the United Way board, so does Kathy. So I see a little bit different, but that 50 grand, they put it to families for roofs, veterans that just didn't qualify. So it goes a long way. And from what I understand from the Homeless Coalition, they're not ready this budget cycle for this employee anyhow, so this really doesn't even need to be on here. Is that correct? I mean, the building's not going to be completed.
Yeah, the building's
correct?
not done yet,
So Kathy Pearson, Assistant County Administrator of Public Service, so I can do that for the record. So we're going to be coming before you on July 9th with the first of this community development block grant dollars, and you're going to see the Homeless Coalition is going to get a pretty sizable funding from that. So I do agree with you. I think they're going to be okay when we come to you. They finally, what the holdup was is that they have, because they received grant dollars, they have to follow lots of rules. They did their architect, they now have the bids back, they know what it's going to cost. They submitted the community development block grant application. The committee looked it over in the past couple of weeks. We made a recommendation, and we'll be bringing that back to the board on July 9th with all the community development block grant asks. So.
Okay. And as far as Premier Health Care, I've been there the first year, I did it because I believed in what he did, and he didn't do a good job following up. But this last year, he's given us quarterly updates. I met with them every quarter. They've done a good job, and they do great things in East Pasco too. There's so many, that gap of people that don't qualify, he's able to help. I would love to see us fund that totally, as well as the United Way. And then the other two, like I said, we cut half for the senior services, and then with the coalition being out, there's another 100 total, or a little bit more. But it's,
So what's your number?
I'd like to see the 150 stay with United Way, the 60 for senior services, which is probably going to go down to 50, and then 350 for the outside agency. But I don't necessarily disagree, Commissioner Starkey. All we need is one of the constitutional to come in with an additional 350, and then we're good. So might want to have that conversation. Just get more.
Yes, so can we agree on my original suggestion, and if more comes in, we can take a look at it?
When do we have to, we don't have to decide this today, right?
No, but I think we need direction. They need
We
direction.
need something to build into the budget. Between now and when you adopt it at the second meeting in September, we can always adjust. We're gonna be adjusting for the final numbers we get from the property appraiser.
Right.
There'll be other adjustments, but we need guidance today so that we can put the vast majority of the budget document together. We can always amend it later if we get more, a higher number from the property appraisers.
So you'd rather us put in the 60 and the 150, what was that?
We could, that's 210. We could do that today, and then between now and the second budget meeting in September, we can make some adjustments to that depending on the final number from the property appraiser and some of the other numbers that we may get.
Yeah, sure. But I think, let's go back again to what we originally said that was going to go to the United Way, and they were going to make these decisions on how to divvy it up. What I don't want to see and continue to see is them not doing what we told them to do, because they just don't want to say no to people, because that's what's happening now. They're asking for more money because they don't want to say no to people. I don't know if any else of you got the list, because I personally asked for a list myself during our meeting.
It's not in the stuff.
So I have, yeah.
Can I see it?
You might want to ask, I'll give it to you in a second. You might want to ask for this list.
Okay.
Sure.
And there's a number of requests that they received. And then they also did a breakdown themselves that equaled
That's
250.
what the provisional.
This is, and that's what,
We'll
this
send
came
that,
directly from United
we'll send
Way.
that list to everybody.
So, again, let's go back to what was agreed upon in the past of, here's so much money, you guys make the decision. So we can't keep coming up and asking for more, because
And
this
that-
is what we said it was going to be.
Commissioner, if I could,
The more needs to come from them in their coffers.
no, but,
And then Kathy.
and that's the plan, and again, this is a one-time ask for additional funding, this won't be every year, this is me talking to Chuck. But keep in mind, they did not fund 17 different asks on this list, and I don't know if he showed you that. But there's, but I mean, you look at
Which one is the
housing,
ask?
they're gonna give, and we're voting on it tomorrow, but $40,000 to Coalition for Homeless. So that's $40,000, again, that they're funding out of the money, which is important to this board. So I just, and again, obviously it's important to this
So there's
board.
always going to be, again, we always know there's going to be continuous ask from not-for-profits. There's
But this
always
is
gonna
a one-time ask. I feel Chuck just took over. Keep in mind, and Alice did a great job. But change isn't a bad thing, and Chuck understands that he can do better. And I'll let Kathy speak, because again, she's on the board too. She's definitely more engaged than I am. But I love the board, I love what they're doing. But we can definitely do better, but this is a one-time ask for the 150.
Meals.
So I came on the board in December, the same time Chuck came on, Chuck Anderson, the new CEO. And if I can just make a recommendation, so the board is very well aware that they've been very weak in campaign funding, they really have. And so I think my suggestion would be maybe let's give it a year, let's wait, let's see what they
What
come
is all
back,
this?
how strong they can do their campaign funding. And if they need the 150, let them come back and ask for it next year. That's going to be my suggestion as a board member, and I think we need to give that. He has hired a development person, they are on board, and I think we're going to see some big things come out of that. So just a suggestion, board.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with the 60 Premier Healthcare. That was probably the best as far as the matches go. I'm okay with the 150 for them. As far as United Way goes, I mean, I will tell you, my conversation was, felt as mirrors just shows, I was told they're gonna focus on raising money. And that was gonna be the approach. So for me to actually see that even up there was like very surprising to me. I didn't expect to see that. So I think they can do more. And again, if it's come to choices, years ago, when the economy had dropped down, there was a big battle as far as how much money should United Way get. I pushed for more funding when the economy dropped, figuring we had to increase for services. As time was supposed to go down, that number is supposed to drop down. It's definitely not happening, as you say. Nonprofits keep on coming, keep on asking. They're making some decisions on how to spend the money. They've got to, I think, stick within their realm that we've gotten and work with that. They do a lot of great things. It is a tough decision-making process, but the more you give, the more the ask's going to keep on coming anyway.
Okay, I think I know what we need to build into the budget, and then if the revenues get tweaked a little bit as we get between now and September, we'll bring you that to discuss how you want to deal with that.
that sounds good.
Very good.
Okay?
So I wanted to bring you up to date with the general obligation bond. As you know, we closed on June 19th on $61.7 million worth of bonds. We got those bonds at very good rates, between 3.3% and 3.18% for each of those bonds. You can see on the millage rate in the center column there, voter approved millage rate for each of the bonds, and then at the very right-hand column, the cost per household. That's on a typical $100,000 home in the county. And so total, as a result of borrowing that $61 million, is $3.48 per single-family home. Keep in mind, the first year of this bond is interest only, so the second year of the bond will be interest and principal, and so that number will increase to about $6.50 next year, just based on the taxable assessed values we have now. So it'll almost double next year because of the principal being added into the debt service. That's annual.
That's annual.
Yes.
Those are annual costs.
That's not very much, or as much as you get.
Absolutely.
Well, and remind you, this is the first of probably
Right, that's
three
just a
planned
small
sales,
amount,
yeah,
right.
so.
I think it works up to, on $100,000, it work up to like $30 annual.
Yeah, I think it's between 20 and
But
30.
we
about
get
that.
it maxed out.
Based on the interest rates we got and some of the things that we got based on the, the new bond rating, it may come down from what we were telling everybody prior to the election. So we get some very good information.
Yeah,
Good
that's
news,
good.
so.
So now if we look at the fire fund, look at the 9% increase in the fire fund because of the property taxes, the assessed value increase. That is a $3.86 million increase in revenue for the fire MSTU. So of course, the fire MSTU, if you look at revenues and expenditures, most of their revenues come from property taxes. Over 80% of their revenue is from property taxes, and then 80% or more goes to the suppression piece of the fire. So if we look at the additional initiatives or enhancements for the fire rescue in 2020, we have the IAFF pay scale adjustment. So that's based on the classification study and as negotiated with the IAFF. We have the EMS quality assurance initiative based on the increase in the transport fees. This funded a number of initiatives to improve EMS services throughout the county. We have fire station remodels, which for 5 of the stations in the fire training center, and those are funded through the general obligation bond. And then the new fire stations, for those funded through the general obligation bond. So those bonds will fund the station improvements, the station construction, as well as the equipment to go into those stations. So if we look at our building inspection and permitting fund, the revenues, of course, more than half of the revenues come from building permits, and the remainder of it comes from licensing, fines, and other kinds of fees. If we look at the permitting, it all goes towards permitting and inspection activities.
These, Bob, these new stations, is that totally new stations, or are those rebuild of old stations?
Those are totally new stations.
Yeah, so there are 5 rebuilds, as part of the bond, there's 5 rebuilds,
I mean, they're part
training
of the bond,
center,
but are they
and then
new
4
stations?
brand new stations.
Yeah.
These are 4 brand new stations. Yes, sir.
There's not a station in Beacon Woods now?
No, and that's the general location. We're working on the specific parcel right now. But yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
So some of those I realize are new areas that we actually
Right.
have a lot of room.
Right, and we'll be opening 38 within the next 45 days. So they're at Overpass and Curly.
Yep.
So in the building inspections and permitting fund, we've built up a fund balance of over $20 million. We believe we need to maintain about a $5 million fund balance there. So we're suggesting over the next 4, 5, 6 years to begin spending down those fund balances to bring it down to the $5 million mark where it needs to be.
And to clarify why Bob said spending, what he means is reduce the fees we're collecting over the period of time, so that we actually probably for about a period of about 5 years operated at a deficit until we get back into balance, if you will. And we'll be bringing that to the board here the next 30 to 60 days anyway, so. But that gets us on par with where we should be. We should not be building up a fund balance in that account.
Can't do anything with it. There's nothing you can do with it.
Right, it's supposed to pay for services, and so we will be returning that as part of fee reductions over the next period of years, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Brown?
I think Hillsborough County, when they had found they had done this a few years ago, the numbers were up so high, they actually just started charging like 60% of what their permitting
That's-
numbers said to be and adjusted, so.
That's, the plan is to do an across-the-board reduction similar to that based on where the fund balance is.
So I mean, I think the quicker we get down, the better off we are to keep everything moving with momentum that we've got.
Chairman, well, good timing here with this. I've been waiting. So, you know, like Sunday, I was driving out in an area, it doesn't matter where, and I saw somebody doing a roof. Obviously, me thinking, hey, it's probably unpermitted, they're doing it on the weekend. So we got Don's guys out there yesterday morning. Sure enough, the whole house is being done unpermitted. So it's a huge issue. It happens all over this county, mainly on the west side. And again, what upsets me is there's legit folks out there that are doing it legitimately. These folks are hurting everybody. So obviously, unpermitted work's an issue. Are we able to, out of this fee, have a couple more minimum housing folks, Code, I know, does a great job working with Don's team, but, you know, when you got the unlicensed contractor, I believe there's only one gentleman. We need to do more with that. As a county, we are, again, values are back. People are flipping these houses, selling them. We need to do it, because Code, what happens now is obviously we'll get with Code will get with Don's team to where we need to be more proactive with it instead of reactive, where Code knows what, I believe they know what to look for. I know we have 2 new code officers, but we need to do more with this, the unlicensed contract.
So there is an additional position for a field investigator for unlicensed contractor.
But do
Again,
we feel that's, again, we're talking about using the permit fees that you see we have plenty of money in reserves for. I think that this would pay for itself in a month. I don't know what the number should be, Don. I don't want to put you in the spot, but I would think we need more than one.
Okay, well, we'll
Maybe-
go look at
maybe
that.
one for
and what-
each
And what we could do
commissioner
is,
district.
and so what we could do is, you see the five field inspectors that we're gonna fund, but we're gonna watch the building, again, like this year where we funded inspectors, but hired them as we saw the market continuing to go up. This is not one where those 5 inspectors get hired right away. We'll watch the market over the next 9 months and make good, smart hires. We could take one of those or 2 of those and hire as field investigators and then change back to building inspectors depending on what the market's doing. So we could do that.
Well, I know this comes into Jeff's realm with Christie, and I know she's working with Keith and Tiffany, which
Yeah,
I
we
know
have
that's
the
been
HR,
great
yeah.
since you guys have all sat down and worked together, but I
Right.
just think that they're overwhelmed. And we know it's happening, unfortunately. We have to hold these people accountable. I know the couple stings we've had with the sheriff's office and everybody's been unbelievable, but we should be having those like every month.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm just
we
being
we
honest.
could do that. I mean, we have 5 field inspectors built into the budget, but we're gonna hire them based on watching the market and watch the inspection rollover percentage and making sure we stay in at a decent customer service, level of service. We can always hire a couple of those to be field investigators, and as we watch the permitting, move them back into building.
Well, what I would like to see,
inspectors.
maybe if you can get with Don and Jeff and figure out the number and let us know,
Yeah.
because I can tell you, they could spend full time sitting at Lowe's and Home Depot. The folks that come in that don't have a license number or business number on their truck and follow them to the damn job. I'm being honest.
Darn job.
So, yeah, the unlicensed job, unpermitted job.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
May I also say, we need nights and weekends? You drive along 19
Agreed.
on the weekend, all the cars are out on the public right of way, and they pull them in Sunday night. And a lot of stuff's going on at night and on the weekend, so we gotta get those things covered.
Okay, got it.
Don?
Well, we actually
You gotta
did
come up
have,
to the mic, Don.
we actually did have the unlicensed contractors, inspectors working on the weekends. So they did have weekend schedule.
Yeah, but I'm talking
Pretty-
about code enforcement.
Well, I think we have some code guys work
Yes.
weekends too.
Nah.
And we're adding 2 more to the budget so we can work on that. So,
And again, our teams do an unbelievable job with what they have, but we've got to give them the tools to succeed. And I think that if you talk to every employee that deals with this, they would agree. And employees that live in the county, they see it all the time as well, so.
Very good. So Public Works, just touching in on Public Works for 2020. We've got 21.6 lane miles to be paved at about $10 million. PVAS, almost 17 miles of roads in the PVAS department. And as we talked about earlier, we'll be setting aside some money for the design of the permanent west side and east side maintenance facilities. And as far as the utilities, you can see the purple bars there represent the number of connections, the increase in the number of connections. Since 2012, the number of connections has increased by 23%. That orange line going across there is the number of FTEs. You can see the number of FTEs hasn't kept pace with the number of connections. In 2020, if we add the 16 FTEs that are requested by the O&M portion of utilities, that's that red line. It doesn't close the gap, but it does help us maintain those additional connections. So the utility initiative requests, operations and maintenance has requested 17 FTEs, engineering 2, fiscal and business 2.5. And so these FTEs are everything from plant operators, you can see the list on the bottom, to mechanical supervisors and so on.
yeah, and the key there is to keep up with customer growth and not degrade our level of service that we're currently providing. So when your customer growth is growing at a certain rate, that additional customer revenue will pay for these additional positions. We want to make sure we don't degrade our level of service across the enterprise.
And so the rate increase primarily we've been paying for the utilities capital projects. You can see the R&R there, 32 projects at almost $3.5 million. The impact fees, 4 projects at $19.2 million. And then we have 2 very large projects here, the Southeast Wastewater Treatment Plant at Shady Hills Wastewater Treatment Plant that will be undertaken in fiscal '20. Solid waste initiatives. Again, the solid waste disposal landfill, they're requesting 2 FTE. One is for the new waste transfer site, environmental compliance. So overall, 3.5 FTEs requested in the solid waste department. Next steps, as we mentioned, the final taxable assessed values will be received by July 1st. We expect to get them sometime this week. At the July 9th meeting, we'll be setting the trim. For our folks out in the audience, trim stands for truth in millage. And once we adopt that trim, that's the millage rate that we'll be going into the next fiscal year with. So we'll adopt a millage rate that we will adopt in the previous year. We'll actually set the millage rate in September. In September, the millage rate can be lower, but cannot be higher than the trim that's been set on July 9th. With that, that's all we've got prepared. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Put some sunscreen in the budget, Commissioner Wells.
Done.
I couldn't shave, it's a little bit too much here. I figured Commissioner Starkey would be the first one.
I was gonna say something, but I haven't had a chance to. A question, that property that we bought on the west side for the maintenance facility, what do we do with that? Did we ever sell it, or do we still have it? Or? You
Are
know,
you
for
referring
Hudson?
to the Nottingham property?
Yeah.
We still hold, we have tried to sell it twice. We have not received bids either time, so we still own it.
So are we gonna is that what this 1.2 is? We're gonna build on it?
That's the plan, yes, ma'am.
And consolidate public works, because right now you have stormwater and,
No, we,
the Leaf Shopping Center and, you have
trailers here.
trailers here that are,
Yeah.
falling apart. And kind of consolidate all that in addition to I think there's some other utility pieces that will be part of that as well from the utility side.
So the money that we're putting away, 1.1, I think it was, for the facilities master plan,
Yes, ma'am?
is that money we're using here, or is this
No,
a
ma'am.
different source? Because
No,
this
ma'am.
is
That's-
funded from
That's
utilities.
the
fund?
enterprise fund funding those pieces there.
So we're
First
building up
instance.
money to build our next building, whatever it is.
No, the facilities master plan money you see is to do the smaller scale facilities capital projects that are too big for the O&M piece, but they're part of the overall master plan. There's another line in there to actually update the facilities master plan countywide, because
I saw
currently
that.
it's 5-6 years old.
180,000.
A lot of leadership has changed in the county since then. It makes sense to revisit that master plan. In addition to, on the Land Lakes area, there's some sheriff's initiatives that are happening out there that weren't envisioned in the original master plan that need to be accounted for. So that's what that does.
Yeah, so we don't talk about the new courthouse anymore and any other
Well,
administrative buildings?
That'll
that-
be discussed as part of the master plan,
So
right now.
after you update it?
Yes, ma'am. That will be part of the update. We'll be getting with all the stakeholders
Okay.
and asking them what their needs are, and does that make sense now versus should we just expand the east and west side courthouses? There are different discussions that need to happen as part of that. That's part of what that master plan
This is
relooks.
part of where I think the county fell on its face when, back in the time, when we were getting a lot of money and not putting any aside. They lowered the millage rate like a rock without putting any money aside for long-term planning. And then we got caught, with a millage rate of five something and then Save Our Homes came in, unlike other counties around us that didn't drop down that low. We did not put any reserves away for the long-range plan, so, the capital, yeah. But we're getting there, slowly
Yes,
but
ma'am.
surely.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I think with, looking at the long-range plan, now that we got Ridge Road hopefully coming to September still,
That's, yes.
it's gonna
Yes,
provide,
sir.
I think, some great alternatives for us to have that road going back and forth. So easy to go from the jail over to here, but even to now you can say, okay, let's just go put it over there. So I think that's gonna help us a bit with the master plan, so encouraged with that. As far as the Shady Hills wastewater treatment plant, I've heard from a lot of folks up on County Line Road where, Hernando's booming up there. And I said years ago when I first came to the commission, we should be looking to the north because we don't want to end up like Hillsborough, to the northern part where all of a sudden we're gathering all the traffic, we're getting the stuff, they got no growth coming out of it from the northern part. I think especially from County Line Road, from, let's say, US 19 all the way over to 41, that's an area we should be looking at developing. Is this area designed to serve that a bit or provide better potential?
Let me ask, we'll throw that to Mike.
So Mike Carvalho, our services along the county line area between us and Hernando are limited in some areas. We have water service, but we do not have sewer service. We have an interlocal agreement with Hernando County where they will take and treat our sewage, but it is, it's one of those things that we to speculate and run utilities out there is kind of a mixed, it's a mixed bag. But in short, we have some utilities in those areas, mostly water. We don't really have any wastewater utilities, but again, we do have an interlocal with to treat that. So it's a push and pull out there.
Well, my understanding is with the interlocal that we may have up there, when it came down to the project that was coming through maybe a year or two ago, they didn't want to cooperate with us. The one commissioner was friendly with it and the others shut it down. That we couldn't do anything up there. So if we're going to develop up there, which to me there's a lot of great potential up there, we're going to need to run the lines up there as well. And granted, the water lines here, but we need to do that. So if we're going to be incorporating this expansion of the plant, I just want to make sure that we're putting the capacity in there that's going to allow for that. Because eventually it's going to happen.
We'll certainly look at that as part of our master planning efforts.
Are our facilities very close up there, or I guess they're not very close? Or
They're not very close. You have a lot of septic tanks up in that area as well, and that's
Reasonably good soils up there.
so there's some moves at the state level, of course, with removing septic tanks. I believe part of that does fall into some of the spring sheds, so there are thoughts and opportunities out there, but it is vastly expensive, especially in the retrofit neighborhoods. Again, we're happy to look at it as part of the expansion plans, but right now, the expansion plans for Shady Hills are looking solely at the current level of growth, which includes the 54 corridor, which is where a lot of that sewage does eventually end up.
Okay.
With long, if I could,
Yeah.
with long-range transportation pot money that could work with Hernando County and Pasco County, if that road does get full lane going out and across with that funding source, it's going to provide some good opportunities. And people, if you're talking on the southern side, they have a tough time getting out in traffic. It's dangerous up there trying to cross that lane because it just doesn't break. So I think it's really need to just take a holistic look when we do our master plan to incorporate all those things in. One other thought, if I could, about other lands. The land that we bought on Fox Hollow in US 19, we had facilities out there, we had some stuff going. There's property that abuts it that are run on 19. What are we going to do with that property as far as planning? And if we don't need it, that may be some property that could sell.
I've turned to look at facilities, because we've had several iterations of ideas to reutilize that property, and I need to ask Andrew to speak to what the latest iteration is.
Yeah, Andrew Baxter, Facilities Director. Sir, can you identify the property again?
It's Fox Hollow.
It's the old mechanical facility that was from
Yeah.
the used car dealership called T Motors.
The Fox Hollow facility is going to become a West Side Utilities Operations Service Center, along with our sign shop is also going to be located there.
Thank you, Andrew.
Ms. Starkey?
I just wanted to remind everybody that I'm really looking for a transfer station of some size on the west side, southwest side specifically. And you can go down and look at the city of Tarpon Springs and see that theirs is on just a few acres. So we don't need 20 acres like they told me in a meeting. We can get it done with a lot less. And we got a serious dumping problem out there. And if we had some kind of permanent transfer station out there, it would save us a lot of money.
Okay.
A lot of time, a lot of heartache.
How large would that be? What size would that need to be a transfer station?
Well, we'll have to ask our solid waste team and let them kind of build a plan for that.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay. Anything else?
That's all we have, sir.
Okay, anybody else? Nathan? You got any turn?
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.